Item. SCP-738. Object Class. Keter. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-738 is to be kept in 3 linked sealed chambers with armed guards and a remote detonation system at all times, as well as constant full audio-visual surveillance. Due to the variety and strength of observed interactions with SCP-738, and the unknown limits of SCP-738, the following procedures are to be strictly followed. When SCP-738 is not in use, its components must be kept one to each chamber. Mechanical means built into the containment area are to be used to assemble and disassemble SCP-738. Should mechanical assembly means fail, then testing is to be cancelled until an engineer fitted with an explosive collar can be sent in to repair the systems. Said engineer is to be detonated upon any attempt to interact with any component of SCP-738. Should mechanical disassembly fail, preset shaped charges shall be used to disassemble SCP-738. The system should then be repaired and reset by a single engineer fitted with an explosive collar. All Class D personnel used to test the device must be mildly intellectually disabled or of comparably impaired cognitive function, and must be fitted with an explosive collar. This is in order to prevent them from learning too much about SCP-738 and possibly using SCP-738 in a way that is detrimental to the Foundation. Class D personnel with IQs over 60, and all other personnel are not allowed into the room containing SCP-738. Class D personnel are allowed into the room containing SCP-738 for experimentation only and are to be provided with continual instruction by research personnel. Description: SCP-738 consists of 3 components. A matched set of mahogany furniture including 1 desk currently labeled SCP-738-1, straight-backed chair currently labeled SCP-738-2, and 1 ornate throne-styled office chair labeled SCP-738-3, all with brass embellishments and royal purple velvet padding. The effect begins when a sentient entity sits in SCP-738-2 in front of SCP-738-1 with SCP-738-3 resting behind SCP-738-2. Cameras show SCP-738-3 moving during the effect, frequently leaning back into a relaxed state as well as moving closer to, or further away from SCP-738-2. Occasionally SCP-738-3 is moved in front of SCP-738-2. Furthermore, cameras show papers and folders containing papers leaving SCP-738-1's drawers. The papers are made of parchment. A quill pen and a bottle of ink emerge from the long drawer. The pen will write on the parchment. Audio recorders record a distorted voice speaking. This voice will make offers and promises, attempting to tempt the occupant of SCP-738-2. Meaning has been extracted from the spoken voice. If, in this time, the entity sitting in SCP-738-2 makes a request, then the tempting and offers will cease. There will be a pause and a price will be stated. This can be bargained with, however. The voice will insist on other prices of equal value. Occasionally when a request is made, the voice will respond by telling the requester that they do not want the object enough or that they are obviously requesting the object for someone else to get around paying full price, in which case the request is not fulfilled. This occurs most frequently for requests that can affect other people, or can transfer possession. Accepting the deal causes the agreed upon wish or command to be fulfilled to the letter, but not past the letter. Furthermore, it will cause the occurrences stated in the price to be paid. The entity has actively stated that the occurrences in the price are intended to cause an amount of emotional and/or physical pain equal to the amount that the requester desires what they request. How parity is calculated is at present unknown. The price has also been stated to be independent of any pain caused by fulfilling the request. See the test log for examples of prices paid and requests made. As a final note, personnel in the chair have reported seeing an entity sitting in SCP-738-3. However, all attempts to observe this entity when not seated in SCP-738-2 have failed, and further descriptions of the entity are inconsistent between sessions, even with multiple sessions with the same person. When asked about this, the entity claims to be the same entity each time. Some frequent descriptions of the entity include seductive and charming. Sessions with the same person that are close in time report similar or identical entity appearances. Sessions with different people that are close in time report different entities' appearances. Descriptions of the voice do not match the voice recorded on the equipment.